Ready now. Get ready now. Okay, now. All right, howdy, everybody.
Howdy.
Hi. Again.
You may have noticed that Gwen was voted off the island. I'm kidding. She was. She had other stuff to do, like rest. All right. Howdy, everyone, and this is the fun part where everybody gets to get involved. Okay. Let's see. I got echo from someone.
It's you, Jonathan. How come I can't type in the live comments?
It is me.
Huh?
I said it is me. All right. Anyways, we are going to do this. Let's pray in real quick. Father, thank you very much for this opportunity to come together in fellowship and study your word. Please allow all of us to share what it is we observed and share our questions that we may have, no matter how silly they sound. There's a lot of people requiring prayer today, and we want to ask for your healing touch. Ask that you make them feel better, whether they've asked for it or not. And we specifically want to name Mary Ann Jones, who is going through some issues right now with the cancer, and also, well, she's been put in a place she doesn't need to be. And anyways, we thank you for that you would comfort them and heal them. Let them know their sins are forgiven, for that is the whole reason we're involved here. And we thank you for that, Abba, in Jesus Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Howdy, Penelope. Howdy, Heather and Gary. Oh, and Landon. Yeah. Huh? All right. And everybody else in chat is in here already. All right. So let's see. We can probably, since Gwen decided to take the rest of the day off, spend go chapter by chapter. Okay. I hope you're watching, Gwen, so I'm not talking behind your back. So let's go.
Are you implying that we can't get through the chapters with Gwen?
Well, she'll just start talking about Ezekiel, and then when we get to Ezekiel, she'll start talking about.
I was patiently waiting and so excited to be like, I found a squirrel, and I wanted to share that with her, and now she's not here.
I know. It's not fair.
Right?
It's not fair. Howdy, Dana. Okay. Let's see here. So chapter 6, starting at verse 2. Anybody got anything early on in chapter 6?
Where's it at? 6:6. I thought it was interesting the way that it's worded, that I will deliver you from your slavery, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. That his judgment was not the means of redemption, but it was a part of it. And it was just interesting to me.
Howdy, Alvina. Okay. Okay.
Well, I had two things, but they were not where Landon was. It's a little bit further in 6.
Okay. Whereabouts?
I don't know that I had it in my head that Moses and Aaron were Levi.
Interesting.
Ram and Jezebel were both Levites.
Yeah.
So that means that, of that, they were both priests. So Moses was not just a prophet, he was a priest. from, who assigned the priesthood to the Levites.
True, but it said sons of Aaron when they became priests.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so the Levites were just the servants of the temple.
Right. Sons of Aaron were the priests, though. Something that kind of jumped out at me today. Verse 15. In verse 15, it says, "And Shaul, the son of a Canaanitish woman."
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, I saw that.
That kind of smacks down the whole pure blood. I'm a pure blood Hebrew. Okay.
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. What does that mean?
Well, the other thing I thought of was I saw Korah. So is this the same Korah that gets swallowed up later on? In verse 24?
There's so many people there's so many names like that, like John or Joshua.
Yep.
And that we could probably find out, though.
What do you?
Sorry, I didn't mean to just run off on your
No,
thing.
how do
But
they spell that? Where is that? Is it the K?
yeah, it's down in 24, the sons of Korah, Korah.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of people named Korah.
Yeah, I know there's at least two.
Yeah,
At least there's more than one though.
yeah. This has 4 listed in the Smiths.
Well, the reason I thought of that, because didn't Korah challenge Moses, or did he challenge Aaron?
Moses.
Moses. So I'm wondering if that would have been something like Absalom challenging King David for, how kingdoms challenge one another for positions. Like you get into the English stuff, well, you had the one house challenging another house.
Right.
So they're both sons of Levite. They're both Levites.
Right. Yep. Let's see. Where else were we? Twice it's mentioned, but I only wrote down in verse 30. And what? Verse 30. Twice Moses refers to his uncircumcised lips.
I was just gonna say something about that. What do you think that means?
Squirrel.
What'd you say, Landon?
That's my squirrel. The thing I looked that up before the show. But y'all go ahead. I'll
No, go ahead. Since you looked it up.
So, because I was reading through it, I googled what that meant, which is sometimes dangerous. Be very careful with that. But I was reading an article where a person said that that was interesting, and that they would usually dismiss it as just a bad translation, which I think is also dangerous. But then it said twice from the two that you mentioned, and what I gathered from someone else's interpretation, but it kind of spoke to me that most people think remember last week when I said something about Moses, I heard that he had a speech impediment, and that's what a lot of people gather from that. But it's actually this person's interpretation. He took from it that it meant Moses saying, "Who am I to speak over the people that I've held in bondage? That I was once above all of them, and I used to talk down to them." I mean, I'm paraphrasing because I don't want to read the article, but it was it wasn't circumcision in the way, obviously, of I'm trying to. It basically meant that he just wasn't worthy, I guess, according to this person, and I thought that was interesting. I had a better way of explaining it, but I'm losing it.
Right. If you look up that word that's used for uncircumcised, the way he uses it, properly, the very first definition he gives, properly means exposed. And that kind of goes, I think, with what you were just saying in that. he would seem to be kind of a hypocrite because he was in a position of authority, and then now he's saying, "Hey, you have to free these people. You have to free these people I kept in bondage."
Right.
I don't know. All right. Anyways, what else? We got anything else from chapter 6?
No.
Yes, I have something.
Okay.
So mine says, and I don't know if it's just a mistake. It says, "And I will be a God to you, and I will be to you a God," and that's chapter 7.
So that's not chapter 6. Okay. Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Chapter 7. Where? Verse,
No.
verse what?
Chapter 6, verse 7.
Oh, chapter 6, verse 7.
I apologize. Yes. And it says, "I will be to you a God." Does everybody else's say that, or?
Yes.
Okay, well, why does it say a God?
Mine says your.
Does it?
In ESV.
See, and that's a lot of issues. It seems to be with pronouns.
Strongs it up.
In let's see, if you look at Holman's Christian Standard in NASB, it says, "I will be your God."
And the restored version says, "I will take you as my people, and I will be your Elohim, and you will know that I am Yahweh, your Eloah, who brings you out from under the burdens of Mitzrayim." So I don't know why it says a God in the King James Version. That's just weird.
Well,
It
it's
is weird.
interesting because I've noticed. I don't know what's in this part. It's somewhere in this history line. But there is. It says. He says, when something along the lines of, you will see that your gods are false and that I am your gods. So singular, he says, I am. And then plural, he says, your gods. And it's interesting because basically the way I took it was that he's saying, you say that there's a deity that controls this, but that's me. And you say there's a deity that controls that, but that's me. Yeah, and basically he's saying, all these different aspects or attributes that you worship, that's actually me. And that's coming up, but something to think about.
The way
Well, and
that
I was wanting to look at one other translation, what you were talking about, Lynn. In the Geneva, I've got a copy of the Geneva 1599, which I think isn't the King James supposed to be translated from that. It says your. It says your God in that one. So yeah, that's interesting what you brought up, Lynn, that it said a in KJV, which I thought it was translated from the Geneva, wasn't it?
Well, they claim, if you look at the letter at the beginning of the King James, they say it was translated from the original tongues.
Oh, so it's saying they went back to the original.
Right. Supposedly they went over into occupied Greece territory and found manuscripts there since Constantine torched all the Western stuff and then hoarded what he kept into that place.
Well, what you were talking about, though, Jonathan, aren't the plagues that Abba sent on Egypt, aren't they in direct defiance or taking down the gods of Egypt?
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
Yeah. Each plague was supposedly under the control of an Egyptian god or those things.
Right.
Anyway, let's go to chapter 7 because that's where the plagues start, isn't it?
to square it up directly from the Hebrew, the way that it's written out, it says God to you. It's two prepositions, Elohim and Achem, which is God to you. So that's what it means in the Hebrew. Anyway, chapter 7.
Anybody got anything?
For 7?
Yeah. Anybody got anything in the early part of 7?
Yeah, what I have is in 6 where it says Moses was in this old KJV says 40, so 40. That sort of jumped out for some reason.
Four score?
40, and that no, that's 80.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Sorry,
And what verse? Oh, there it is. Never mind. Found it.
6.
Yep. So that, yeah, it's pretty old. But he's just getting started.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess.
Verses 10 and 11, I thought about, I don't know if you've seen those boastful videos of certain magicians doing things. They're doing same things that were supposedly miracles.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you got the guy pouring out a basket of fish that seems to be coming out endless. You know, just pouring out fish and fish and fish and fish and fish. And then some other magician, they have a video of him parting a cup of coffee. Right? Like we envision the Red Sea parting.
Yeah.
Another guy that draws a wire completely through his neck all the way. Anyways, all kinds of stuff. And so this had to be so disheartening if you think about it to Moses and Aaron.
And I thought it's further on into the thing. What I've thought of is they were just making it worse. You know, because I mean they're deceiving actually made the plagues worse.
Right.
Because they were trying to, because of their manipulation, and they're trying to hit Abba head on with, oh, well, you do that, we can do that ourselves. But then at some point, Abba's like, you're not going to be able to duplicate that, and he just shuts it down.
Right.
Yeah, and once it hit the gnats plague, they were no longer able to do it.
Now, it's interesting because in the King James it says lice, and if you look up that word, what was it?
What verse is that?
Good question. Yeah, it's actually not until the next one. Hey, I'm doing a Gwen. Wait a minute. Verse 16 on chapter 7, I wanted to look at because it says, that they may serve me in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan from the get-go was to be in the wilderness. And somehow that...
Go ahead.
I don't know. I just never noticed that before because everybody's always focused on land of milk and honey.
Yeah.
Well, and that sort of kind of goes back to something you have discussed before, Jonathan, is we could possibly be in the wilderness right now. You know, this could be a wilderness type experience of what we're in because we're dispersed.
Spiritual isolation.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so we're doing the same thing right now is in a way, if we can view it that way, we are serving in the wilderness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I probably got ahead of you.
No. Nope.
I did have something for 4. I was reading through it. The word host jumped out at me, and I figured I understood, but I wanted to just look it up to be sure. And
in verse 4?
Yes, sir. And the word means, it usually means owners, but it does mean it's like army for warfare or a heavenly host. So him pouring out, these. I was just envisioning as I was reading through it and doing a study on this particular verse, the angels of heaven working for the Father. But it also, in one sense, means of whole creation. And I thought that was interesting because it was all of creation turning on the Pharaoh, turning on Egypt. Like all of creation literally ceased to behave the way that it used to and obeyed the voice of God and started, doing what he told it to do and afflicting, the Egyptians. And I just thought it was interesting. Yeah.
And it is. That I also noted on in verse 18, who read chapter 7? Was that you?
That was me.
That in verse 17, you said verse 18, grow weary is what yours says.
Fish in the Nile shall die, and the Nile will stink, and the Egyptians will grow weary of drinking water from the Nile.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because the King James says, shall loathe to drink of the water of the river. Which I thought that was interesting.
What do you think the staff or the rod that he was using, what do you think that represents?
Authority. Power, authority. Because the rod he's using is the same one, right? It's the same one that when they're in the wilderness and they say whoever's staff grows blossoms or something like that, and Aaron's staff, it's the same one he used, grows almond buds, grows almond flowers on it.
Pretty cool.
So are these actual like rods that are straight rods, or are these shepherd's hooks?
I don't think they're either. I think they're like those like the fancy, sort of natural walking sticks that are so popular these days, is how I have it pictured.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That could be implanted in my head from the Ten Commandments.
True.
Ten Commandments. So I don't know. That's just kind of what I always pictured.
Well, if they're staffs, if they're shepherd's hooks, then what comes to my mind is a shepherd's hook's both used to gently guide and direct, but it's also
used to capture.
It's also used to capture, and then you go back to Psalm 23, where it talks about my rod and the rod and staff shall comfort me. So that was why I was thinking about that.
Anybody got anything after 18?
Wait, I'm trying to frame this up. Oh, well, I was thinking about so it says the Nile stank, and then the Egyptians didn't drink water from the Nile, so it must have just been like the normal thing. But the magicians and their secret arts, them trying to show that they can do these things too. Pharaoh doesn't care. And then down to 24, and all the Egyptians dug along the Nile for water to drink, for they could not drink the water of the Nile. And it made me think of that saved by works. Not so much spiritually, but it's like we can save ourselves by, and they they would have been dying of thirst and thirsty. There's no water. What are we going to do? But it just made me think of the I can save myself sort of mentality.
Well, and I thought about that too, Landon. It's talking about, I think it says in there that it was a week.
7
That
days.
the Nile, yeah, but I mean, I think physiology, you can only live 3 days without water.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if there actually were deaths in Egypt because of this. Because it said not just the rivers, but all the pots and everything in the houses also turned to
Right. And then, if y'all are done with 7, but I was thinking of the order of the plagues and how. Okay, so first, like, there's nothing but blood water, and then frogs coming up out of it.
Good segue to chapter 8 there.
Thanks.
No, that's good. That,
Go ahead.
yeah, that's yeah, frogs everywhere. Right? All you Cajuns should be happy about that.
I was gonna say, for the South, isn't that a blessing?
They're at the buffet. Yeah, for sure.
So the frogs could survive the blood, but the fish,
Apparently.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Ooh, that's creepy. And then if they're in all the houses, they're kind of tracking the smell and that stench, and cleaning the floors and.
They're
Well,
not
some-
the greatest smelling animal.
well, and some frogs are toxic. You know, some frogs put off poisons and stuff. So
Yeah.
Well, like I don't know where I first saw it, but somebody said, if the first thing you do every morning when you wake up is eat a live bullfrog, that'll be the worst thing that happens to you all day.
yeah, and you'll be in the hospital.
So, yeah, that's kind of interesting, though, because they were everywhere. Everywhere.
What stuck out at me, it says that they will come upon you. So it wasn't, to me, what came in my head, it wasn't just on the land, they were actually on the people.
Right.
On their beds, on their dishware, on their countertop. I mean, just everywhere.
I was thinking about that, too, because the Egyptian custom was to shave all your body hair off, right? So that must have increased the icky slime factor quite a bit.
No. So one frog is good. Hundreds of frogs, no, not good.
Well, think about that. To cover the whole land, that's got to be billions of frogs.
Everything would be moving, and then especially after they were all dead, ugh.
Well, in here too. Well, we have the Colorado River toad, which is, it's like encased in the dirt until it rains really hard, and then they all come out. Whoosh. So.
Yeah. I had a big old spade foot when I was little. He was about this big, and he would come back every summer. My dad would find him all hibernating, and he'd pull him out for me. Here's your toad, then.
Yep.
I just let him run around in the backyard. He was awesome. That's why I say one is good.
I'm trying to find it. Doesn't it say that they were in like their food bowl?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
I said, doesn't. I'm trying to find where when we were reading it, it made a point. There's a verse somewhere to say that they were in their bowls, like it had something to do with food or something you drink out of.
What Penelope just said, verse, oh, maybe not. Yeah, I was talking about the water. Yeah, they were everywhere.
In the ovens and the kneading bowls.
Yeah.
Right. So it's everywhere.
Well, and if they are toxic, I mean, because some frogs are toxic, then you've got contaminated water again. Because there's so many of them, that slime and nastiness and all that stuff is going to make the water nasty again.
I thought it was interesting once the fly plague came that he made it clear that it wasn't going to hit Goshen, that there was going to be a division between his people and the Egyptians, but all the other plagues would have affected them. I was like, that's interesting.
Everything before the flies.
Yeah.
And actually, well, I guess that's a technicality, but it doesn't say that the other ones were separate, but I believe that they were, the ones following the flies.
It does say in chapter 9 that the hail was not in Goshen, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
think it said that nothing. So I'm sort of kind of under the impression that Israel was protected.
Excuse me.
The land of Goshen. It said the land of Egypt, not the land of Goshen.
He said he separated them out
Yeah, I think so.
and he protected them like he's going to protect like his remnant and stuff during the last days. There's some people that are just going to be separated out and protected for most of it. That's what I believe anyway. So it seems to, he's a pattern. He's a pattern God. You know, he just does these patterns. So odd.
Right. And that's something too. And this is a bit off track, but it talks about in the end times that you'll eat poison and it won't affect you. And what's everybody worried about? Well, they're modifying the food. They're trying to poison us with the food. They're trying to poison our water. It's like, well, wait, are we believers or are we not?
Right.
Well, yeah, because if you get to that, I mean, if you look at everything that's being done, Jonathan, something that you guys have talked about before is like in the heartland where all the farmlands are, some of that red algae that's running off into the Gulf of Mexico is because of all the farm practices that are being done up in the Midwest. All of that stuff is draining out. So all of our soil is already contaminated.
Right.
And our water's being contaminated. And it doesn't it say in Revelation, at some point, is everything contaminated or is it just 1/3?
Well, 1/3 of everything dies.
And so if it's 1/3, is it like that the other third is like for those that are in the wilderness, for those that are being protected, there's going to be an amount protected for us, or at some point is everything contaminated?
I don't know. Everything's going to be destroyed at some point because we're going to get a new heaven and a new earth. So,
Well, I mean before that.
right.
But yeah, you're right. At some point, I think if they keep going the way they're going, everything's going to be contaminated.
Well, come on, that almost everybody in the West, well, North America eats fast food. And I mean, at least in the United States, for E. coli contamination of meat, well, they could cure that easily if they fed the cattle grass for 5 days before they slaughtered them. But they didn't do that because that's expensive. So what they did is they developed a solid form of ammonia and mixed that in with hamburger meat. And then they say, okay, that's okay to eat. And so anywhere where you get fast food, that is what's in the hamburger meat. That's why their food doesn't spoil. So I mean, that's definitely poisonous. You can't do a shot of ammonia.
Yeah.
I had this discussion with some people at work the other day. They were talking about that meat is not good unless it's eating corn. And I was like, well, naturally it doesn't eat that. That it would actually, it's their grass fed. And oh yeah, that's terrible. Terrible meat. Lean. Have you ever heard of Wagyu beef?
Yeah.
Apparently they feed cows beer and like a really unhealthy diet so that the meat's, mostly fat. And that's the most expensive meat in the world today. It's the most unhealthy meat you could possibly find. I just thought that was funny.
Well,
Right.
if you think about the most highly genetically modified food crops, it's rice, soybeans, and corn.
Wheat.
And wheat.
Yeah.
And that's what basic staple of a lot of stuff is.
Yeah.
I think 90% of corn is GMO, And then the wheat they've genetically modified. You know, what is the song that's waving grains of wheat?
Amber waves of grain.
Amber waves of grain. You know, wheat used to be like shoulder high, and now they genetically modified it to where it's barely knee high now. And you almost cannot get the original form anymore.
Right. And part of that, though, too, is we don't let the land rest as a nation. I mean, we've totally depleted the soil. Now let's add chemicals to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what that is? That is doing to the land the same thing they do to at least human women and now men. But come on, you can get some Botox injections, get a little plastic surgery, take this supplement and that supplement, and et cetera, et cetera. Right? Now
You won't look old, but you won't look human.
Now everybody looks like the Catwoman from the 80s or the 90s, whenever that lady was popular.
So another thing in 8 that I noticed is it said the Egyptians would stone them. And I was like, well, that's weird because that's not they got that obviously from from Abba, right? I mean, or was that a practice that has always been around?
I don't know. That may have started with Cain.
Well, it's kind of like when you have two different belief systems. I mean, there's certain countries that, because of culture, I guess they saw it as like throwing it in the face of the Egyptians. Maybe that's my just thoughts on it. Like, because that they had different gods that they were worshipped, it would almost be like a choking point to agitate them to make sacrifices to a god that they didn't believe in. I don't know. Maybe they just feared the repercussions of it.
Okay, let's go to 9. And did you all write anything down for all of that? Who has something for 9?
Well, I had 2 different things on 9, and that was what we talked about earlier. I think what Matt was talking about. In 4, it says that the Lord shall sever between the cattle of Israel and the cattle of Egypt, and
Right.
nothing die of that of the children of Israel.
You
And
all
then,
you people in the Midwest and South, have you ever seen cattle killed by hail?
I have heard of it. I have not
Right.
actually witnessed it.
Because it's got to be some monstrous hail.
Well, we have golf ball size hail here.
That's got to be one hail of a storm. Okay, sorry. I couldn't read this.
Just had to, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get those golf ball size hail coming down. That can do some. I mean, that takes out roofs and yeah. And then the other thing I wrote down was in 7, where it said Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not one of the cattle of Israel died, and the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. And the thing that came to my mind was jealousy.
Oh, interesting.
Was, because we do that sometimes. We like in the workplace, we see somebody who's doing well, or somebody that got a promotion or something nice happened to them, and we're upset because it didn't happen to us, and we're jealous.
Yeah.
And so we set out. Pharaoh hardened his heart again.
Right.
So we set out to make that person pay for their blessings.
What about the boils? Dust turning into boils.
I noticed that even the beasts, it says the man, the beast, and the magicians all got sores and boils.
want to know how they knew that it was from the ashes, like from the Egyptians' perspective.
I think because Moses made a show out of it, told them to do it in front of,
Mhm.
what was it? Sprinkle it toward heaven in the sight of Pharaoh, verse 8. You know, I can almost see Pharaoh out there on his porch, you know, what's he up to now? What's he up to? And then all these boils start popping up.
Good sound effect.
Right. Made
When
me
I was
think of
about
Bull.
13, I ended up with a blood disorder and I got boils. Those things hurt. They hurt. They're
Understatement.
nasty. Nasty.
Yep.
I like how Abba took out the magicians this time.
Right.
They couldn't even stand. They couldn't even stand up.
And they couldn't fix themselves either.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Right.
Anybody got anything else in the middle of this?
I wanted to mention, just because I noticed earlier, and I didn't want to speak too soon, but the order of them, as we talked about, like the blood first, then frogs coming from that, then the frogs dying though, and them having to clean it up, and then things like flies and gnats, something that a frog would eat if it
Mhm.
was still alive. If there was an abundance of frogs around, it would, they could have been like, well, at least they're eating, this, but that didn't happen. They had to pick up this stinky mess of dead frogs everywhere, and then the other plagues were sent in. That there was nothing to give it relief, but Abraham asking the Father to take it away. And I just thought that was.
There's actually something they did on, I don't even know what the cable network is, but they had an hour-long special showing the scientific progression of the plagues, and they're all just basically what you noticed too. So the order of them and everything.
It also says that the hail killed all the plants and trees.
It will do that. But just for the Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where was that? That was later down. That was further down. Like 20s, in the 20s? Where is that, Matt?
26. Where
25, yeah.
Yeah,
The
25.
hail struck down everything that was in the field in all the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And the hail struck down every plant of the field and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the people of Israel were, was there no hail.
Right. Now, see, this is something I know the people like using this for calendar warfare, for lack of a better term, but they point to verses 31 and 32, saying, "See, we have to wait until the barley is ripe before we can start the calendar." But this one time that we read this, and the flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in ear and the flax was bold, but the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were not grown up yet. So they'd been planted, but they hadn't grown up yet. And to me, just reading it this one time, I thought, that's showing Yah's mercy. He's not going to starve the Egyptians to death. He's leaving them a future food source. But he, wiped out what they had presently.
But it also tells us what time of year this is.
Right, it does tell us the time of year. But
So
we do
we
that
see-
anyways, because when they leave, they have Passover. Or
Right.
they leave after Passover. So it's kind of a moot point saying, see, this is when the calendar starts, in my opinion.
Well, the other thing that came to my mind was back with the hail, it was mentioned that the people of Egypt that feared Yah got their cattle in, got their answer. And I wonder if those people went out with, like you, I think of the Ten Commandments. Charlton Heston, there were Egyptians that came out with the Hebrews or with Israel, and I'm wondering if those people came out with them.
Right. And
That was just a thought that came to my mind.
but also the people that came down, right? Because Shaul was the son of a Canaanitish woman.
Mm-hmm.
So, they try to draw this. They try to say it's all about genetic purity, and it's not, because anybody that has repented and come to repentance and sought the ways of Yah, of the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and Jacob, has been taken into the fold.
Yep.
Howdy, Rebecca.
One other thing, because I know you're moving on to Ezekiel, one other thing that I wrote down was in 32, where you mentioned, Jonathan, that the wheat and rye had not grown up yet. And I don't know how to exactly say this. I remembered in Revelation where it talks about the wheat and the tares growing up together.
Oh, that's in
Where is that?
Jesus, Yeshua saying that.
Okay, so the wheat and the tares growing up together. And here the wheat had not grown. And it just something struck me on that of it wasn't time yet.
But the barley was wiped out. The barley and the flax was wiped out. There's something to that. There's something to that.
That's what that reminds me of.
We can't harvest the wheat. We can't harvest the barley and flax because it's been destroyed, but we will be harvesting this. Interesting. We're going to have to look into that more. There's something there.
Yeah, because there's a preservation of the wheat. So, and then you go to the wheat and the tares, and that's who's growing up together, and then the tares are taken. So it just struck me that there's something with that. I don't know.
That is really interesting.
But
Okay, what about Ezekiel 28, 25 through 29, 21? There was a lot in that too. There always is. I didn't get anything until 29. Nothing jumped out at me.
Miss
Person?
whenever, hang on, I'm trying to see. I never mind. I'm gonna look it up. Look it.
Okay, so what jumped out at me, verse 13 and 29, you keep looking that up, Landon. That says, "Yet thus saith the Lord God, at the end of 40 years will I gather the Egyptians from the people whither they were scattered." Hey, those guys get scattered too.
For 40 years. So the time that the Egyptian or the Israel walked around in the wilderness, that's the amount of time that Egypt gets scattered.
Yeah, very interesting. Yep. It does reflect a lot of tradition.
That's what I was thinking.
That it is reflecting Revelation, or Revelation's reflecting it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, can you hear that truck?
Nope.
No. But Miss Lynn, what version are you reading out of?
What now?
What version are you reading?
Oh,
Whenever you did the reading. Which
when I was reading out of the King James version,
okay.
and then I have two other ones over here too.
Right, no. I just I thought it's either in 25 or 26. I thought it said something different in the ESV than the King James version. But I don't know.
Oh,
It's either I don't know. I don't want to cause confusion. I thought I heard you say no, it says house of it. Okay, that's my bad. I just misheard or something.
26. Okay, I don't know. Come on, Landon, spill.
No, I thought when I was reading along, I thought I heard you say either house of Israel or host of heaven were flipped. It said something different, but now I can't find it. And it's another translation thing where
Mhm.
but I can't pinpoint where it was at because I was looking, but I can't put my finger on
Well,
it.
let us know when you find it so that we can look at it.
Is this in 29:3? Abba says, "The Nile is mine. I made it for myself, but I will put hooks in your jaw and cause the fish of your streams to cling to your scales." What is it in Revelation that talks about Leviathan? In there, like a hook and jaw, or is that in Job, where it talks about Leviathan being hooked?
That's Job. Cast thou, draw out Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down.
Yeah, y'all must have been talking about me. Okay. Anyways,
No, we were talking about Leviathan. Is that you?
well, the last four letters are the same. Okay, let's go to Luke. Where was that? There we go. 14, 11, 14 through 22. Now, this is very interesting. That I don't know if you all have listened to that Carico study, but he makes the assertion that at this point in time, Satan was bound.
Mm-hmm.
How can he cast out demons, right? Because he goes through this whole thing. When a strong man armed keepeth his palace, his goods are in peace. But when a stronger than he shall come upon him and overcome him, he taketh from him all his armor wherein he trusted and divideth the spoils. So that is what I got distracted with, thinking about that.
Well, this is just my opinion. Doesn't he say, I saw, where does it say, Jesus said, I saw Satan fall like lightning?
Right.
In my viewpoint, he is cast out of heaven at this point. So I don't know.
Hmm. I'm looking for it.
It's interesting they chose Beelzebub. Like, as if they had at least an understanding of how to manipulate something. I mean, why? Yeah, I get that I'm kind of jumping to a conclusion there, but they specifically named Beelzebub. And I don't know.
Did you look that up?
No, what? Which one?
Beelzebub.
Doesn't that mean like Lord of the Flies or something like that?
Yes, it does.
Well, in Strong's it says the name of Satan, the chief of evil spirits. It also has a Baal is allocated to it. Demonic flies, prince over demons, demonic flies.
Beelzebub, Greek 954, of Chaldee origin, the dung god, the poop god.
And it says whenever before you click on it and you just kind of hang the mouse over it, says Beelzebub, Beelzebub, the name of Satan, the chief of evil spirits of Chaldean origin, the dung god, and the name of Satan.
Who is it? Aren't there some priests that throw dung on themselves?
Not from my church.
No.
I don't know. There's so many different names in Scripture. It seems like for like Satan. You know, like the dragon. I know he's even called Leviathan. Beelzebub.
Is he referred to as Leviathan?
Well, when I just searched that word, I got there's 4 times in Scripture where it's used. And one of them is in Isaiah 27:1, and it says, "In that day the Lord, with his sword and great and strong sword, shall punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crypt serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea."
Right. Huh.
See, a lot of that, though, I believe that there's multiple entities, and I believe that while they all serve Satan, they're not all Satan, and I believe it's a good distraction of the enemy to be able to do that, because if we all think we only have one enemy, then we're not going to be looking out for the other ones.
Right.
Didn't David and John just do a thing on the monsters of the Old Testament and discuss Leviathan and the deep? The deep, when it says the deep calls to deep, but those are actually
Creatures, something that's alive. Yep. Are you frozen?
put aside.
You froze there for a minute, Donna. D. You froze.
Out of my
It ended up it left off with the deep, and then I realized I thought you had finished talking.
Wait.
And
The deep calls deep, and that the deep is an creature. And that that Abba had to destroy, and that Leviathan is an actual creature.
right.
Yeah, because you got Azazel that it talks about,
Mhm.
and then you've got Lucifer. So there's two names. I don't know, and it's like the whole scapegoat thing where it says that all sin was put upon Azazel.
Mm-hmm. But Azazel's locked up in the desert with rocks, shards of rocks, according to, what is it, Enoch?
Mm-hmm.
That he's locked up, and that's what the scapegoat's for, is they ascribe all the sins and then send him out to Azazel. Azazel, however you. And they send that. There's two goats. One goes out to the desert. One sent out into the desert to Azazel. But yeah, Azazel. All sin is ascribed to Azazel in Enoch.
Of the fallen angels.
Yes, the fallen
Mhm.
of the fallen angels. Yeah. But Gabriel was who deceived Eve.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah, Jonathan, what you're saying, the enemy would like us to think there's just one thing, and there are 250 fallen angels
That we know about,
that we know about.
or that were involved in that.
Right.
But figure the dragon drags a third of the angels with him. There's got to be more than 750 angels.
Well, from what I understand, 250 came to Mount Horeb, and that was the fallen ones that corrupted everything. And then eventually, Satan will drag with his tail a total of 1/3 of the angels. I don't know if it's all happened now or if it will happen over a period. If it's happened, because I've heard different people say that it happens over a period of time. That it didn't just all happen at one time.
There's got to be an answer somewhere.
Yep.
All right. What else we got? Let's do general discussion. So what about the Chinese landed on the moon?
I saw grass. It looked like they were
Well, not them, but robots.
At least there isn't any squirrels so far in any of those pictures like the Mars ones. So
Right.
Did y'all see that they did a thing a couple of weeks ago, the flying car, Elon Musk, the flying car that they were like all excited about, and they forgot to turn on the background on the CGI when they were doing it.
yeah,
They were trying to make it look like it was really in outer space flying around, that's what they were proposing, and they forgot to turn on the CGI screen.
You can see
I was like,
Big riot. Where? Oh, really, Jasmine? I didn't hear anything about that. Now I have to look it up.
happens every year in Bisbee,
Well,
once a year.
talking about the prison up there. Let's see. In fact, I'm certain she's talking about the prison up there, even though I haven't seen it yet. Yeah, there was this thing they always did with the prison riots. You'd have a couple of hundred inmates riot, and the news release was always the same. The press release was always said 15 inmates had a disturbance.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see.
It must be a slow media day.
Well, it's funny. I thought all the media was going to be talking about impeachment, but there's nothing in it. The United States Penitentiary. No, maybe not. 13 hours ago, Florence West Prison.
Are you in Italy, Jasmine? I don't.
That's what you think. Florence is actually in Arizona. So is Baghdad.
Interesting. Baghdad, Arizona.
Oh, it must have been a big riot because they say 150 people.
Ooh.
Pepper spray and tear gas were used.
Which of the 100 prisons in Arizona is this one talking about?
Florence West.
There's 100 prisons in Arizona?
I don't know. There's a lot. They're everywhere.
Probably.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot here. It's privatized. They've made it a business where people will bet on stocks based on how many people are in prison.
Yeah, all the prisons in Arizona are privately owned.
No, not all of them.
Oh,
We've got two in Arkansas, 2 state prisons.
So we got way more than that for state prisons. And then we got private prisons. And then we got federal prisons.
It's like to me the federal ones in the Gulf region. I guess it's too easy to get out the country.
Actually, we've got 3 in one town, in one area, that are like the felon prisons, high security, all within about an hour of me. And you drive through there and it says, "Do not pick up hitchhikers."
I found it interesting in Georgia when I was down there in Columbus. We went to the dump, and when we got there, I was informed that it was the prisoners from the state prison that ran the dump. So it was quite effective as far as, financially. You got almost free labor, so it was good though. It taught them to do something.
What happens
Well,
when somebody?
isn't it? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what happens when somebody's throwing something away that they're trying to conceal? I mean, not all prisoners are bad. Like, they're not all like horrible people. I understand some of them do the right thing, but it just raises the how did this get here?
Well, if prisons are, because I don't know that much about them, and you guys would know, if prisons are privatized, then they're money-making entities, right?
Yep.
So they have to have a certain capacity.
They all are money-making entities.
yeah.
Doesn't matter private or state-run. They're there to make money for the state or whatever entity.
But down here, it gives the judges incentive to keep you in prison. And I've seen some examples of that very thing, where they would just deny parole based on the fact that they made money from that person being there. Because it's like it's like it's set up to where they get government funding based on how many people are there. So that adds to just how they get paid at first, and then it makes it worth more all the way around. Be right back, my dog's got me.
All right, well, let's let these poor people go and get some rest from us. So everybody, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Lynn and Landon, and Matt, and Dee for reading with us, and Gwen, wherever you may be.
She didn't get to hog the prophets today.
I know. That's probably why she left. Won't let me read the prophets. No, okay. I know we're just teasing you, Gwen. We are. Relax. Calm down. Okay.
We love you.
So everybody, we love you. We'll talk to you later. Have a beautiful rest of your rest day.
Bye.
Bye.